Fresh.
Peace world. What up? My name is Jeremy Pena.
Palmer.
Say your last name.
Pena. Palmer
Yes,
Pena.
brothers. Peace to the world. Peace to B-boys, B-girls,
Yes,
artists,
sure.
and loving hearts. Welcome to Refresh Friday. This is a podcast where we revisit key moments and particularly breaking history that have shaped the scene. And today's a really special topic in light of everything going on in the world in the fight to end racism. And we have a very special guest with us today. Let me introduce to you Asia-1 of BBOY SUMMIT and No Easy Props.
What's up, everybody?
What up, Asia?
Hey.
How you feeling? Supreme Sister, Asia-1.
Yeah, I had to rock the Supreme hat today.
Yep. How you feeling?
I feel better. I wake up and I pray and I stretch. And those two things get me out of bed.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's
So
what happens.
we in these times with everything going on, I think this relating it to breaking history, this is one of the key moments, I think, to create dialogue and use as an instance to speak about and raise awareness for what people are out in the streets fighting for this past 2 weeks, and not even just this past 2 weeks, but for hundreds of years, fighting to end racism and, in particular, police brutality and the abuse of power. So, to get straight into it, this was a clip highlighting from a news perspective, and I think we chose this clip in particular rather than, I think like the widely circulated one is the Freshest Kids documentary and like what happens in there. I think a lot of B-boys and B-girls have seen that clip, but we wanted to shed light on this because I think it can create a lot of dialogue as far as like what the news portrayed it as. And
Yeah, because watching the clip earlier, what struck me as interesting is the words that the news people were using. Like, basically saying that like y'all wouldn't leave, so they had to disperse the crowd. Like, basically saying that y'all were defying authority. And it's like, we know it wasn't like that. Because from what have y'all? I mean, how did it actually start? I remember you saying it was just graffiti artists down there that they were trying to say to go away, and they weren't even a part of B-Boy Summit, right?
Right, so let's give a little context sort of to set the stage.
Yeah.
First off, we're coming on to day 2 of the summit. The first day was extremely successful. And what I really pieced together was you're dealing with a hierarchy of a system, right? The system that we live in. So the first day was at UCLA, a white institution, right? I mean, it's a college, it's a prestigious college. It was a prestigious location. It was run in part by the campus student events. So we were insulated, we were protected, so to speak, because you have to remember at that time, hip hop at that stage of the game was really demonized. It was considered a thug, like a gang-related thug, seen in subculture. We were seen as, anti-authority, anti-government. That is how hip-hop was perceived. By the police, by the FBI, by the CIA. It was like the new public enemy #1 in the 90s. So the first day was really successful. The second day, we were at Venice Beach, specifically in an area called the Graffiti Pit that is not there anymore. It's a concreted area that was right there off the beach. It was used by skateboarders. It was all graffitied up, every inch of it. And and there was a big stage there, like it was an outdoor amphitheater. So, me being the organizer of the summit, I had went and got a permit which is what you had to do and you still need to do when you're dealing with city land venues, parks, rec, things like that.
Yeah.
So I went and got a permit, and it was somewhat challenging to get it, but I was able to get it. There was a cost involved, and at the end of the day, we were permitted there. It was called the Urban Dance Assembly, and that's really what we were doing. So we go there to set up. While we're there setting up, just about to plug in the music, start, we noticed some people booing, right? So the attention shifted, and the way the graffiti pit is set up is that the amphitheater and the way it is, it's directly on the other side of the beach. So on one side is the sand, on this side is the graffiti pit. You can stand on the top of it because it also, like I said, it's an amphitheater, so it has like concrete seating and levels of it. So people that are on the higher levels of the concrete, they could just look right over onto the beach. So what happened was there was a guy on the other side of the concrete that faced the ocean, not the side we were on, and he was painting. He was doing a piece, and he was an older white man. Turns out he was from Germany. He wasn't there for Summit. He was a tourist that thought these were legal walls. So what happened was this cop is walking by over like on the beach, sees this guy painting, and he starts running towards this dude, and he knocks him down while the dude's painting. The dude didn't even see him. Imagine you're painting, you're like, shh, and somebody just knocks you down in your back, knocks him down, hog ties him, cuffs him like that, and is kneeling on his back. So at that point, the people that were on the top level started booing, and a lot of people had ice. It was hot. They had cups with ice in them from like the pizza shops or whatever, and they were taking the ice and they started chucking it at the cop because he was right below them. So he looks up and he's like, "What are y'all doing?" And then so he comes in to where we are, and when he sees all of us and everybody's booing at him, he gets scared. And it's a lot of people already. It's already a couple thousand people, black and brown faces.
Yeah.
He's freaking out.
Yeah.
So he radios in, and when he radios in, it's almost like somehow he radioed straight for backup, and not only what it was backup, but the SWAT team came. And every district of cops throughout LA was actually summoned there.
So it's like they were already on deck, like
they were. It was crazy. So when they came, and they actually came to talk to me, I showed them my permit. I said, "We're here. We're legally here. We're not breaking any laws, and it's not even just that we're here. We're permitted to be here. We've paid money. We're legally allowed to be here. We've basically rented this facility."
Yeah.
So, he's like, "Well, you guys all got to leave," and we're like, "Why? We didn't do anything wrong. Like, why should we leave?" So that's when you see me talking to the cop and basically saying, "So, officer, are you saying that if we, you don't leave, you're going to arrest us?" And then pretty much like, I was trying to tell people, I said, "Look, this is what they're saying. They're telling us to leave. We don't really have to leave. We're permitted to be here, but I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want you to get arrested.
Yeah.
But but we're permitted to be here. We're allowed to be here. We're not breaking any laws." So, then the madness ensued. And then there's levels, and we'll get into the levels later because
for sure.
I think what you
it
said
basically
earlier
lasted
about,
a whole year.
I think what you said earlier about the perception of hip hop culture, and then him looking up and seeing black and brown faces, and him all over his transmitter relaying it like that.
Yeah,
that probably
that image was already in his head.
That exists somewhere. That particular officer's call for backup, and I'm very curious to see how he relayed the situation. He had a bunch of fear, in his heart probably because of this and those perceptions and all that. And the police departments that and all the counties that he phoned into and transmitted and called for backup, that contributed to everybody being summoned because they felt like he probably relayed the situation in a way that was translated to be way blown out of proportion and was completely based off of his fear of the situation due to these perceptions that you spoke about.
And on top of it, the cops, so we were all arrested. A lot of people were arrested. I was arrested. And by the time we actually, you know, went through the different chains when you get arrested and, you know, where we ended up, the cops were so mean to us because they were so mad. They told us that, they said, you know, we weren't even supposed to be working today. We got called in. We don't even, this isn't even our beat. You know, we have a whole other beat. You know, we're not even supposed to be here, and it's all because you guys, they was spitting on us. They were calling us crazy names. And I remember I was just like, we can get into all that though. I don't want to spoil the show.
Let's go into the clip. So we'll play it,
okay.
We'll watch it and observe it together, and then we'll pause at a certain point to give our thoughts and perspective.
Okay.
Choice for news. Fox 11 News at 10.
Police mean business when they tell an unruly crowd on Venice Beach to leave. Hundreds of people on the boardwalk get out of control, throwing bottles, trashing cars, and refusing orders to go.
Good evening, I'm Susan Hirosuna. Venice Beach was no safe place this afternoon. Police spent more than 2 hours pushing, pleading, and pummeling, trying to clear an unruly crowd. Christina Gonzalez is live in Venice with the latest for us. Christina.
Good evening. Cleared it? They did. The boardwalk is pretty much deserted. Not unexpected, considering what happened here this afternoon. Let's show you. LAPD officers trying to clear Venice Beach. It all began when officers tried to arrest a couple of young men suspected of spray painting in what's commonly referred to as the spray pit on the boardwalk. Hundreds of kids were attending a hip-hop
That
summit
wasn't the
pit,
people.
and when police tried to cancel that event, things got rowdy. When officers in riot gear then tried to clear the area around the event, things got rowdier.
Get out of here. Leave. Leave. You're causing a nuisance. You're not helping. Leave.
Groups of dancers taunted officers in one corner. A block away, news vans were getting spray painted by taggers. And in the middle of it all, tourists visiting the beach were getting moved and scared.
Yeah, we have my 4-year-old niece and my brother in a wheelchair, and all of a sudden the cops just started rushing on us, and we couldn't get out of there fast enough, so it's kind of scary.
This man on the phone didn't get any time to hang up.
Because you're hearing the sirens and this rush of people. It's like, oh my God, we're going to be stampeded or something. I'm from Miami, and I don't even see this in Miami.
Once the police cars were trashed, officers decided to clear the entire beach. At one point, a large group of Venice locals decided to just sit in protest. That didn't last long. Back and forth it went until sundown.
Why don't we just go home now?
Well, I'm going to because nobody's behind us and she already got hit by the cops.
It took a while, but the crowds dispersed. Now, there were some reports of injuries, but there were...
Man, I mean, when I first see that, it's just like, you know, our First Amendment right, it's our right to gather, you know, peacefully, you know, and it's just, that just gets stripped away right there, you know, and it's just, it's really sad to see because it's like, you know, we turn on the TV and that's almost something you could see still happening right now in the streets, right? So it's like, where is the progress? You know, where, you know, as hip hop, you know, peace, love, unity, and having fun is a big staple in it. And it's like, they just don't see that whenever we're gathering. You know, they don't see it like that, you know? And it's sad to see, man, because it like you said, whenever we first opened this up, hip hop it's just life changing. We are impacting communities. We are doing things like that, you know, on a daily basis. You know, it's like we were talking here at Break Free about, you know, everything going on. And it's like, you know, we started talking about like what we do here. And it's like every day kids are coming in and out of these doors. And, You know, they're getting that hour, like, you know, just earlier, the other day, Moy was teaching a class, and, you know, I was thinking to myself, there was about 5 or 6 kids in there, and I was like, wow, it's awesome to see them working hard right now and forgetting for at least an hour and a half about everything that they're seeing going on. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
the power in that. So it's like, watching that, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, like, I mean, what progress has been made? Like, I mean, is it the same thing going on as back then? I mean, I didn't even realize that they cleared the whole Venice boardwalk because
Oh
of
yeah.
that, you know?
How quickly,
Like,
how quickly did
They
it
clean.
escalate? How quickly did it escalate?
It escalated quick. I mean, it went from, I'm telling you, it was literally like right when he radioed in. So that's incorrect. Hi, Moy.
What's up?
So the kids that they showed painting, of course they showed the brown kids painting, right? That wasn't the one, the initial that the cop got. He was on the other side. He was a white, like middle-aged German dude from Germany. He was, so that's, you know, we know the news, like, they usually slant stuff. It's not always correct, so I just want to clarify that.
You know what I noticed too? The way they edited legs is round. They didn't show him dancing. They show him getting up, like, almost in like a assertive way, like looking at the
Defensive mode.
Yeah, they didn't show him dancing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then the words that they were using, it was just, man.
You know what was crazy for me is I was there. I was there for that whole thing, and I was maybe like 14 years old, 14, 15 years old, and that was my first B-Boy Summit event, and then it was like the best event I've ever been to, right? And then I go to Venice, and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
What's going down? I remember I was standing near where Legs, you know, literally said, if y'all gonna get arrested for dancing, then I'm with it. Then he throws his round, and like it was just crazy to witness all that. I have this, it's I know there was a lot of craziness, but to bring up a funny moment, I remember people were running through these crowds, and all of a sudden I see Ivan. And he goes, yo, you guys are still here? What are y'all doing? And he just runs. He just runs, you know?
He runs by you real quick.
But I was like, man, it was crazy. It was crazy to be there and to see that footage like just come to life like that again. I'm just like, wow. Because, you know, you hear about everything that's happening now, which is so sad, but to go back 99 and it's like it's still happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can see
it's
the
police. It's the police. It's an issue. I mean, it's that implicit bias, that word that people are learning about what that means, which is really that these cops, based on the way that they're taught, the methodology that the police training system uses, and the calls that they respond to, they start developing this bias, right? So that suspicion and that bias creates like a lot of these overreactions, right? And this was an example of an overreaction, right? They didn't have to. We weren't the ones that did anything wrong.
Yeah.
You know, they should have been like, okay, we see that you guys are here. We know you're. First of all, they should have known that we were there. There's levels of business on the part of the city of Santa Monica and the police department there that was wrong because we were permitted to be there. So they should have known we were there. They should have anticipated we was going to be there, and they should have been welcoming to us being there and being like, we're gonna make sure this is peaceful. We're gonna be here. We just want to let you know we're here. We want to keep everybody safe, and we want to make sure this event is successful. That's what they should have done.
On that note, that brings up the topic of like upholding duties, right? Like the police officers, the police department, they assume a vast amount of responsibility for the role and the job that they are undertaking. And the same thing with citizens upholding duties, and you upheld your duty by getting a permit. You upheld your duty, and you did your job correctly and in a good way of organizing peacefully, of getting your permit and doing that on Venice Beach. This is an extreme example of them not upholding their duty and not doing their job correctly. Like this gross overreaction, it's a Chris Rock joke, and this has been circulating the past 2 weeks, but it's like, sometimes it feels like the police are the only ones that can screw up on their job, like grossly, and get away with it. It's like a pilot for American Airlines can't be like, oh, I crashed one plane, it's okay. You know, like, and for police to be able to time after time get away, and like them being at the top of the hierarchy for power, and them to be able to abuse it in instances like this, like I think this is why we're seeing this today, because there's no reprimands, there's very few reprimands, and when it is, it's like it's because it was caught on camera like this, you know, and or,
Right.
or the instance
Well,
of George Floyd.
So getting into that part, so the whole thing started unfolding because it's one thing to remove a group of Black and brown and ethnic people of color, kids from an area, and maybe nobody's gonna care or hear about it. But once you clear the entire Venice Beach all the way to Santa Monica, and it affects 250 to 300,000 people, then you got a lot of people to answer to. So sort of what happened is that they needed a scapegoat, so they were gonna make it me.
Yeah.
So after they arrested me, what happened was that when you go to jail, they take your stuff, and I already pictured in my head, because I only had a little Adidas backpack, and inside that Adidas backpack was my ID and the permit. That's all I had on me. And I was like, oh, I know they're gonna take my stuff, because they have to, I already knew it. God gave me the vision. I knew what was gonna happen. So I was lucky to get bailed out of jail by the mayor of Compton, who had seen what happened in the news and took pity on me, because my bail was $10,000. I was charged with inciting a riot. It carries like a 25-year sentence. Like it's a major charge. So at that point, the ACLU, all people had seen this footage. It was all over the national news. It made national news because it was a huge riot, quote unquote, right? So the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, if you guys don't know about it, please learn about what the ACLU does. They are a very important organization to support. They basically defend people who have been wrongfully imprisoned. If their rights have been violated, they defend people for free. Okay, and so they decided to take my case. And so because the news wanted to make it this big thing, like, were they permitted to be there, or were they not? Like, did the police overreact, or was it right what they did? It was all gonna be contingent if we were permitted to be there. So then the police go online and they're like, they didn't have a permit. They were unlawfully assembled. Because they took it. They thought I wouldn't have copies. I had like 20 copies sitting at home. So as soon as I was able, actually, somebody else went and got the copies and brought them to where we're gonna be, and we had to hold a whole like meeting, and with between, like, Fox News was there. Jane Yamamoto was calling me all the time. She was like trying to be like my best friend back then, because she wanted to get the inside scoops. So she was calling me, and so she was like, did you have the permit? Did you not have the permit? And it was like crazy drama. And I said, I have the permit. She was like, you have it? We're coming right now. So that's when she throw the permit up on the screen, and she's like, well, they were allowed to be here. It says it clear as day right here. It says the hours, it says the time, it says the police chief signed off on it. So now it became, so then things started to change, and actually the senator of California, Tom Hayden, he wrote a letter, and he wrote it to me and to the police chief, and it was basically like stating that everything that he saw should be in a training manual for the police in terms of what not to do. This is what you don't do.
Wow.
And so again, yeah, that's 99.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest, like with the summit, we have historically had problems trying to hold that event. The reason that it was in LA that year, because we were not allowed to hold the event at all in San Diego anymore. I had to sign a legally binding contract with the city of San Diego stating I would never do the event there again.
That goes back to that perception of hip hop and people of color, and that struggle with that.
They didn't want the event there, even though it brought all types of tourism, everything. They call this a gang tagger convention. That's what they labeled us as. And so they were like, you can't, and they made it so we couldn't get any venues to work with us, because they pushed on the venues so hard and said, if you work with these people, we'll shut you guys down.
Yeah.
So that's when we made the move to LA. But you can see it's like it's the way hip hop and brown and black people are seen by the powers that be, which are the police.
Yeah.
They are first level.
And tying it into you know, what's happening, you know, now, like hearing you say that the city of San Diego just didn't want y'all to be there, like y'all are not welcome, like y'all can't do this here, even though this is the land of the free, this is America, this is not accepted here, you know. And I think, you know, it's just been happening for so long. It's been happening for generations, and just people are just tired of instances like that, you know. Like, what if the mayor of Compton wouldn't have, you know, had a heart like that? Like, what would have happened to you, Asia? Like, would you have been in jail and been subjected to years in prison for something that you did not do? And that happens to people. Some people do get put in jail and they stay 3-4 years in jail. What are they supposed to be? Just happy about it when they get out? No, their families are angry. Their communities are angry. And it's just been happening over and over again. And it's like, you know, watching this Summit 99 footage, hearing you say these things, like, and, you know, this is just, you know, that's just a micro for the macro, you know what I'm saying? Like, it happens so many different places, you know, and it's, you know, communities around the world are just tired of it, you know? And that's why, you know, I thought it was important for us to talk about these things, especially since, you know, hip hop is such a driving force and is such a positive movement, you know, and that perception of us needs to change big time, you know. Like,
MVP, can we pull up the next clip? The next clip. We'll go back to the other part of the clip and use it for more dialogue for our discussion.
The next
part. Yeah.
We were part of a seminar and a conference called the BBOY SUMMIT, which for 2 days took place at the UCLA, for everybody to come and have a peaceful relationship with each other, have a good time, for kids to express themselves and dance and have a good time.
Today we had a jam. We're supposed to be out here. We had a permit to be out here. We were all legit.
There were a couple kids who decided to do graffiti, which is against the law, and we all attested that.
All this graffiti was on the walls, so they thought it was cool to write on the walls, right? Okay, obviously it wasn't. But that they weren't with us. It wasn't our thing. That was just separate. So we said, well, we can't be responsible for anybody who comes here. So we all sat down. Well, when we sat down, the cops came and started shoving people out of the way and kicking them in the back and stuff. And so like everybody got scared. So we all started running.
I don't think it's fair, and I think it was extremely unconstitutional. We weren't allowed to express ourselves in any way that we felt was civilized. As soon as the cops came, in riot gear, people started to get nervous and anxious and felt threatened. We weren't threatening anybody. We don't have any weapons. We had a turntable.
So what started as a day of fun and peaceful ended in violence. We are live in Sky Fox. We'll send it back to you, Susan.
The beach scene was back to normal on the Venice.
Yeah, I think, man, seeing.
Just the narrative of what they're saying ended in violence.
Well, I think it's tiptoeing a fine line. So, when now talking about like the media and the mass media, they won't say it outright, but they'll say it in a way that you know can leave it up to interpretation to have that implicit bias that you talked about fed into the minds and the eyes and the ears of everybody watching
society. You know,
so they're not going to outright say that these were thugs doing this and it was good that they showed footage of the ciphers and they showed that side of it, but it's almost like that fine line that they keep walking that contributes to all this, that, you know, they can't, what would be the appropriate thing to do, and it requires organizations outside the mass media to do this, but for people to step up and say, hey, this was not, this, like you speaking up directly, the person who organized it and saying this is not what happened. This is the real story behind it, and it's kind of sad that the mass media can't do that and can't step up to the plate to do that.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to watch. You know, the other thing is too, there's the permit right there. So the people that were protesting, it was really cool. J-Love organized that, and she helped facilitate all these peaceful protests that, you know, so it wasn't the Venice Beach locals, like they said, sitting there. It was all of our people that had their arms linked and chained and were sitting down, you know, and they were just mowing them over. It was just, you know, when you actually are a part of, you see the way that they're trained, it's really freaky, man. I mean, it is terrifying. That's why I give so much props to these young people that are on the front lines right now of these protests, because it is, I mean, if you see, like, I mean, it's hard to watch, man.
Yeah,
it chokes me up.
Yeah.
yeah, I get emotional, man, because it's like, you know, when you're just there and you know, people just trying to do what's right, and then, you know, even just standing up for somebody else or putting their body in front of somebody else, and like, just what could happen. I mean, it's really freaky. It's really freaky how it goes down. But I think what we have to remember is hip hop was a culture that was created out of socioeconomic racism. It's really important for people to understand that, especially these young people involved in it now from different countries, and that weren't a part of that original land or place where hip hop was started, and the people, the brown and black people who started it. And I think that part is extremely important to understand, that hip hop is a revolutionary activist culture. That's what it is.
By nature.
The art forms we do are part of it. But it's not enough just to do the art forms. Like, it's really important to actually remember what it's born out of and what the larger picture of hip hop is, which is black and brown culture, black and brown people,
yes,
and those lives.
Yeah.
And that we that aren't black and brown, myself, I'm mixed and I'm Asian and you know, what have you, but it's not even necessarily to guess. Maybe that's a little bit of a weird term to use, but hip hop was not made for us. It wasn't created for us. We've adopted it.
Yes.
We've become part of it. And it is so important that we understand that, and that we recognize that we are part of something that came before us, and we need to uplift that constantly. Yes. And we need to keep promoting that image and keep promoting that understanding.
Well, we were talking about this before we went live, Asia, and I think it's very important going off of this. And we were saying that back in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, in the thick of everything and everything being created, there was no choice but to be an activist. If you participated in hip hop culture, you were an activist. You were standing for the socioeconomic problems that created this and birthed this culture, and there was no choice. Like, that's what you were doing if you were a hip hop participant. And that kind of, I don't know at what point, but it switched. It certainly switched for me when I started dancing in 2006. And, you know, I think in that generation, in the 2000s, it became to where you didn't necessarily have to be an activist. You could participate in this, and you could be a fan, and you can travel the world, and you can dance, and you can represent this culture, but you don't have to speak up about these issues, and you still can rep this culture. And that was kind of, at some point, that was a switch. And I think the OGs and the elders and the educators in this community need to find out and create dialogue to where everybody around the world who participates in this culture needs to in some way play the role in being an activist for the socioeconomic problems that birth this culture. It can be, that's why you see, I think, with everything going on, such a need and such a pressure for people to speak up, whether it be a black screen, whether it be you just acknowledging that this system exists, whether it be you acknowledging that this was birthed by black people, by brown people. These are the first steps that so many within this culture I don't think they have taken yet. And this is why there's such a pressure for people to do that. You know, everyone has their roles, and everybody is not meant for the front lines. Everybody's not meant for this particular role. But what we can do is speak up. Everybody has there's a button for it. There's a button that you can simply press to share and spread information. That's activism in some way. That's acknowledgement, you know. And I think that's what, can you speak a little bit on that, like relating it to the situation now? What do you, for the younger generation out there, b-boys and b-girls and DJs and graffiti artists who might have came into this culture in the past 10 years under the circumstances where they don't necessarily have to speak up, they can just participate in this and be accepted. What is the message you have for them, for what is the first step to take? What do you think they should do in order to speak up on issues like this?
Well, it's exciting when you're young, because young people are the ones who lead change. You know, I've even been listening to like a lot of information, realizing like when people, like when you think about people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and a lot of amazing activists, like, you know, everybody, Che Guevara, different people, these people were young, man. Like, you know, like when they started out their activists, like when they started out, they were young, you know, early 20s, what have you. So young people have the fire, they have the spirit to create change. And I think understanding your power is really important. Understanding that each one of us has a sphere of power, right? It starts with us, and then it extends to our family and friends, coworkers, larger community. So there's several levels, and I think it's seizing the moment and the time right now is that people are posting, which is great. They're posting, and hopefully they're learning. We live in a world right now where, especially young people, they have a hard time actually focusing in and learning sometimes. It's just screen, 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 image, 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 speed. It's important to actually take some time and learn. There's all these resources out there that are being promoted. Campaign Zero, Color of Change are two really good orgs to understand what's going on from the side of police in terms of the excessive use of force historically and why. And then the greatest part is all of those organizations are reporting, and there's enough statistics and evidence to show it's actually a larger situation. It's the way society's structured, okay? So it's a societal issue that affects everything because people create systems. And the system that is protecting abusive police, racist practices in government, in law, in economics, those are all, it is because of individuals that are created or part of the system. So it could be dismantled, but there's several phases. We're in the phase one, which is attention and awareness. So people are paying attention and they're becoming aware, right? Then there's the learning part, where people that don't know enough about it are learning about it, or people that do know about it are spreading the knowledge and teaching people, right? And then hearts are changing, right? And so that's affecting change on a level we can't even ever underestimate. When you can help change an individual's heart, that's where racism lies. It's part of ignorance, fear, and like self-hatred. So there's those things and that's the heart changes. And then you activate it through action, which is the next phase, which is, well, we're partly in that because the protesting are bringing awareness. The protesting is important to bring about the action. The action is voting. We've all learned, you know what we've been learning more than anything is that voting in local elections for your state and district attorney determines if these police are going to be able to be prosecuted, if they're even going to be, I mean, you can't ever underestimate the power of these local elections with the state and district attorneys. The mayor and the elected officials choose the chief of police. So we get to know who your local body of government is. And you know, we as people who live in these places, we can push for reform. We can hold these people accountable. We just have never known who to hold accountable. We're like, so this whole thing has uncovered a lot of great information. It makes us understand that we are empowered as individuals. We know what we can do. What can I do? What can you, Jeremy, do? What can you, Palmer, do? Well, we can definitely post and bring awareness. We can protest. We can vote. We can have those uncomfortable conversations with our own family members. We can give them information. We can have that kind of, we can look at the companies that we support. We can look at companies that support our events. We can ask them to be more involved in racial justice. We can say, we can help you do this. I think that the shaming element, we talked about it before, it's less effective because when you shame, it creates more of a seething hatred and division. And it was like, I was listening to this really great T.D. Jakes interview, and he was breaking it down, and he was like, you know, we don't want to divide, we want to multiply, right? So it's not about dividing right now, it's about multiplying, because the numbers is what we want, right? So really it's about creating a safe space to have conversations with, again, these could be corporations that we support, that support our scene. It could be where we personally put our money. Yes. We don't even think about stuff like that enough when we go eat. But if we know that if it's a systemic problem, the way to change it is changing the system by changing individuals. Yes. Yes. And we also know that we need to see more people of color in positions of government, in positions of like fire department, police force, all of that. We need to see people of color in positions to affect change. We need to support Black and brown business, because if we support Black and brown business, we are helping Black and brown people create wealth that they historically have never been able to create and leave for future generations. Yes. So we have power. I have power every day, depending on what I want to put my money to. We have, some of us have additional money that we can donate. That helps too. Yeah. You know, there's so many ways individually. So we're sitting in a time that some people feel despair, but some people feel a sense of energy, and they're actually feeling like this is positive. And I'm starting to turn that corner, because I started with the feeling of despair, because I've lived long enough that I understand systems of oppression, and I understand, you know, yeah, I understand how it works. And when I think about like dismantling a system that our country was created on, it overwhelmed me. But you know what helped change me? Of course, prayer, but also talking to friends and seeing their perspective helped me a lot. Talking to some of my friends and hearing them say, you know what, I see this as a moment of truth. This is a moment of reckoning. This is like amazing, because people are having an opportunity to have their hearts and minds changed. And we are having an opportunity to learn about what we can do, and things are happening. So we've turned a huge corner, and we turned it, even though it took so many years to get here, it took 400 years to get to this corner, we're all of a sudden at this intersection, and we're turning it quick. So it's like, it's not about saying, oh, let's just wait till all this dies down and things get back to normal. It's not going to be back to normal, because it can't be back to normal, because we don't want it back to normal. Yep.
The veil has been taken off a lot of people's
eyes. The veil has been
now.
lifted. I liken it to a Band-Aid, like of a really bad wound that's been sitting on there, and the Band-Aid, the wound hasn't had a chance to have sunlight or anything heal it, and now it just got ripped off, and it's like pussing, it's infected, but it's gonna heal, because now the Band-Aid's off. Yeah, for sure. So we gotta look at it like this is actually somehow, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and everybody else, their lives served a purpose.
Yes, for sure.
And even though that's the hardest thing to say and imagine, their lives served a purpose, man. We got to make sure our lives serve a purpose.
Exactly.
And hip hop, we are mandated to do that, man. Like, we are mandated there's nothing that is more important in this culture than us serving our purpose, as we are mandated to. And we can do it.
I think when people feel powerless, and I think there's been a lot of people that felt powerless in the past couple of weeks, that despair you talk about, it's because of that perception of shame that might not even be there. Like, if somebody comes down on you hard for, let's say, you doing something incorrectly, or you posting wrong information, or any other instance of like discomfort, like, I think that's a big thing to shine a light on. Is like, discomfort needs to be embraced, you know? Yes. You need discomfort, a certain type of discomfort, in order to change and get out of that comfort zone, you know? And I was reflecting on this a couple of days ago. I feel like us as a hip hop culture, and especially in the breaking scene, we should be familiar with that general sense of discomfort, because we preach originality and innovation and all of this within our personal craft, but we need to take that outside of our own personal craft and think about it in the sense of community and embrace this discomfort in order to fuel us, and not take it as us feeling powerless or us feeling shamed or us feeling filled with despair or disdain. It's okay, I recognize this discomfort. This discomfort is a sign that there is a problem that is beyond me, and through dialogue, through discussion, through research, I'm going to turn this discomfort into something productive. I think that's a starting point that many people in this culture need to begin with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of little things are changing as well too. I think I've seen a lot of instances where, like, sometimes you'd be in a conversation and somebody would say something that would have have a racist tone to it, and some people would they would throw it off their shoulder like, oh, I didn't hear that, I didn't hear that. But now it's to the point where people are making a decision like, no, I heard that. Let's talk about that. Why do you feel like that? Let's really find out why you feel like that, and we can prove to you that it's not the right way to look at it. We are all human, and that's what I love about hip hop. Watching this while we're talking, like, it almost seems like the authorities don't want one love. They don't want communities, in arm in arm, because of the power and numbers. They got the guns, but we got the numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they know that too. So it's like they try and divide us and divide us. And that's why I love hip hop, and that's why I have so much respect for you, Asia, for you standing up in these instances and even communicating with us. And I'm looking at the live chat. People are saying, this needs to be said. Thank you, Asia. Thank you. So I mean, it's just important for us to keep having these dialogues and keep learning from past experiences and grow from it.
Do you still have a copy of that permit?
I do. I have everything.
Yeah.
Because I had to. I have, we pulled it all out actually for the last summit. We created a retrospect. Big up to Easy Rock for that. He created this whole retrospect about everything, about how everything. Actually, it was a history of the summit, and it was in it. We put it in it.
Yeah.
But I do want to say something, and that's just to remind people that, when we're silent about stuff, I think some of the issues people are having is they're like, well, people aren't speaking up, they're being silent, they're being, they're being complacent, or their silence, people are taking their silence as they're okay with what's going on. And I think that, if someone is silent about an issue like this happening right now, it might be because it doesn't hit home for them enough for whatever reason. And the thing is this, like, if we were all silent and none of this would be going down. Like, if nobody took action, like, none of this would be happening. I was talking to Box. We were texting, and I was saying, we don't all like want to be leaders. Like, we don't wake up and necessarily want to be a leader. Some people do, but I know I never was like that. I was put in a position where I was either going to do that or I was going to be silent, right? So I just want people to think about that for a minute. Like, people don't necessarily want to be pushing as hard and having to be the one to organize and being the one, but some of us just have to. And I've just been one of those people where I've had to, because I've experienced it, right? It's like when you experience, like, police oppression of people, police brutality, when you experience, like, things that that don't serve a purpose and aren't constructive to society, that aren't good for people, you do have to do something. You do have to stand up. And I just really implore people that are being silent to understand that racism affects everybody in some way, shape, or form. it affects everybody. And if we could start by doing those steps that we just talked about, things would change. Economics would change. Neighborhoods would change. They've proven that police excessive force and brutality is tied to segregated neighborhoods and segregated areas. And the two states with the number one problem with actually police violence number-wise are like Wisconsin and Illinois. And those are places we're like, oh, that's weird. I wouldn't necessarily think that. Look, maybe Illinois because Chicago, but we're like Wisconsin,
Yeah.
But and Minnesota's another one. It's just right up there on that list. If there's a whole list you can research. And again, it's because of those areas are the most segregated. Those states have the highest percentage of segregated areas. Segregation is a product of racism, and it furthers racism, and it also furthers police violence and brutality against people of color. So that's the systemic part, and that's economics. So economically, things have to change, and that's when it comes to, again, who you support, who you donate money to, what restaurants you decide to eat at. We have to remember that. We want people to thrive. We want Black and brown people to thrive. They've never been given a chance to thrive in this country yet. Never. We know that. And anybody that wants to debate that, I don't even know where you're going to get your proof, because it shows, the situation that community's in because of their inability to have economically been able to thrive. So these are things that can change, and they are changing, but we can't be silent. We just can't. There's no, it's just not a time. Like God tells us, there's a time to be silent, there's a time to speak, there's a time for love, there's a time for hate, there's a time for war, there's a time for peace. And we have to mobilize on our time right now that we're in. This is God ordained, whether we like it or not. So we gotta, we gotta stand up.
It's very reassuring to me to hear that you're like reinvigorated, and you say that you feel despair at first, but now, that has flipped and you feel inspired. And I think that it's reassuring for me, because that can serve as an example for whoever's watching now, or whoever wants to tell this story or say to tune back in. Like, use this as an example, and Asia-1 can be a beacon of light for you to foundation your switch. You recognizing that, yes, I have the discomfort and despair, but now I can turn this into inspiration. And going back to the power in numbers that we talk about, that's how movements are built, and that's how change is made. Is like you mentioned earlier, Asia, each individual being inspired, whether it be by their own individual research, or somebody like you, Asia, inspiring them to do it themselves. That's where things start growing and growing and growing, and that's where real progress is made. So, and you've been doing that since Summit 99, since you started in the 90s with this. So I have to
we haven't, you guys remember, we wouldn't even be talking right now if it weren't for hip-hop. Hip-hop allowed us, hip-hop is the most authentic way that people of all different nationalities and ethnicities and all different skin colors have actually come together. We are proving that it's possible to do this. Hip-hop, they should honestly shine a light on us to say, is this possible? Let's look, let's create a hypothesis. Can people of all different colors and skin colors actually live in the same neighborhoods, be in the same organizations, crews, marry each other, raise their kids up together? We are proof that it works, man.
The writing's on the wall.
So we should take, that's why we owe it as a culture, as a community. I mean, I want to live next door to Black and brown people. I want our kids to all go to school together. I want our kids to have the choice of who they want their friends to be, and not have to just be friends with people their own skin color, because they're not even around other kids enough because of segregated neighborhoods. Like when we change that, and we're all living next door to each other, man, that's it. Because segregation causes so much insulation, and when you're so insulated and you don't know how another group works, all you can get is the media. And then you start feeling like, dang, I don't even know if I want to be around those people. They seem scary to me. They seem different than me. They've even proven that if you don't get your kids around people that look different than them, by the time they're like, past elementary or high school, they don't have a chance as adults. They're already probably going to have some racist undertones. And if it's not racism, and if it's, say, black kids instead of white kids, then these black kids are going to have pre-bias against these white kids. Do you understand? So this is again, it's a societal problem. We are seeing it magnified because of police violence, but we can't underestimate that it's a societal problem. So that's the part that we have to work on changing. Affordable housing. We have to make it so people can buy homes and all live in the same neighborhoods together. It can change. Like things, I believe things are going to start changing now. It might not happen overnight, but I think it's going to happen quicker than we even expected it. Because I'm telling you, we turn this corner quick. It's like, boom.
Yeah, you said it, like hip hop makes it easy. Hip hop is the proof that this reform and this system can be changed, and people can coexist. And I know there's a lot of talk about going to the ideals of peace, love, unity, having fun. And I think there can be a lot of cynical views sometimes, and people can speak out and have disdain sometimes about the culture or point out the issues. But going back to the micro, like zoning in on the micro of things and looking at our little issues within our culture, but then zoning back out to the macro, we do have instances of peace, love, unity, and having fun. And we do have so many instances and so many stories of people coexisting on a level of peace and understanding and easily accessible communication between you and I, like living in different cities, or I open my home to you when you come to Houston anytime. You open your home to me when I come to Denver, and vice versa for everybody around the world.
How it
like
works.
The answer is right there.
Or even just like how it affects like generationally. I mean, like look at my son, for example. Like ever since since he was born, he's been around hip hop. He wakes up in the morning, he hears me listening to the Supremes, and he looks over at the record cover and it's 4 black women on there. So it's like he's already used to seeing he's already used to seeing people come in and out of my house. Like he goes to these dance events, he sees every race, every color there. So it's like that's how beautiful hip hop is. It teaches them at such a young age. It breaks that systematic change that maybe generationally it's been a part of their family. So it is super powerful. And that's what I thought about whenever Asia said that. Like it's just it's super powerful. I mean, I know you deal with that with your son. And I know everybody who's involved with hip hop that involves their children with it, their family in it. It's not even just about children. You can, I've seen at hip hop events, your aunt there, your uncle there, you take your mom or you take your grandma. So, it exposes them. It exposes them to the beauty of the human race, of us just being, one. It's not about how you look. It's about where your heart's at.
And on a simple level, whenever we see that and feel that and understand that, and for everybody out there, if you experience that yourself, I hope you can reflect at the end of the day and understand your importance in speaking up and doing your part. That feeling and that experience and that blessing, at the end of the day, it's a blessing. It's a blessing for you to be able to feel that and experience that and be accepted into a culture like that. So that should tell you why it is important for you to speak up. That should engrave in your mind and in your heart the importance for you to be an activist for these problems and speak up about it and do your part.
For sure.
Find your part and do it and take the action to do it.
Yeah.
You got it, guys. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we are too blessed to be a part of this culture. A lot of people didn't grow up with the type of morals and values that we learn. And diversity, cultural diversity, a lot of people didn't grow up with that. They're getting that through hip hop. That's their first taste of that. So they're kind of fiending to learn more and understand more how that works. And I just think like at events and stuff, we could probably do better at, especially now, taking advantage of the current situation we're living in and really have space and hold space more for those kind of conversations to happen at events. And people to be able to share their stories. I think it's important, especially for Black and brown people, to be able to share their stories at events and speak from their heart. And so we can get their backs, and so we can understand what they've been through.
Yeah, there's no question that I think you have done and will continue to do that, Asia. So I feel privileged and blessed for you to be able to easily come on and say yes and share this and share your perspective with this important part in breaking history. Like I learned things. I think it's of course from you who experienced it from ground zero and organized it is a perfect person to hear it from. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing this. And I think this is necessary for it to happen and to explain and to use this moment as an example of why it's important for everybody within the breaking scene in particular to understand this problem and understand their part. So thank you, Asia.
Yeah, and to anybody watching, let's keep the dialogue going. Like, this isn't something that I want to see just, people, really support and behind for a couple of weeks and then, it just goes away. Like, this is something that stays in our hearts, and we keep pushing for equality for all Black lives,
Yeah. No, we have to, and remember that. I mean, I know people are continuing on. We have to continue on. People got to go to work. We're still breaking. People are still writing graffiti. Things are happening, but keep this a part of the platform. Find a way to, we're all, because of this current COVID thing, we've had to switch gears really fast, right, with everything. So we know that this is another thing we have to switch gears fast with and realize we have to find a way to implement this into our programming, into our breaking, into the conversation of why we're posting what we're posting. And I think that that's going to be important. Let's not let this momentum die down, because I know all them people that have been protesting hard for all of these days, their work shouldn't be just finished. Their work shouldn't be forgotten or trivialized. It takes a lot to protest, march, to stand up, to do all the work people are doing. So let's do our part to continue to keep these conversations and to continue to have spaces and even do more. Find ways that, as in hip hop, that we can really affect even larger change. I think a lot of us are ready to do that. So, we're going to start working on things like that.
Props as an organization with Summit. I believe the foundation is there, and it makes it easy to continue this work. So
for
I have
people
to say,
like us to carry on the torch for what y'all have done. And
so I have to thank you again and again and again, over and over. I think the love and respect goes deep for both of us and for everybody here at Break Free. So thank you, Asia.
Thank you, guys. I want to give a shout out to Easy Rock and J Love, who were both a big part of that '99 summit as well, and just for everything they went through too, just to give them love, and especially J Love for organizing all those peaceful protests within it too. So I just didn't want their names to be omitted.
Of course.
Thank you, Asia. Rock and J Love.
All right, you guys.
We'll see you soon.
Bye, Asia.
See you soon, y'all.
Be easy, okay?
Peace out. One love, y'all.
One love. Thank you all for watching. I hope that you guys can share this message. I think this is very necessary for everybody within the breaking community to use this as an example. If there are those who are feeling discomfort or feeling lost, this may be their starting point. This may be the thing that opens their eyes to what's going on in the world outside right now. So let's take a step back. Let's be original. Let's be peaceful, and let's be everything that we strive to be within our own personal craft, but also do that for our community and the breaking community, the hip-hop community as a whole. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week with our full schedule of podcasts. So follow us at Breakthrough Worldwide, and we'll continue to do our part and do our good work. Much love, everybody.
Much love, everybody. Peace.